Yeah.
I mean, we can co-answer this. The first thing that comes to my head is that I think right now we're in a time where people are afraid to be judged, very afraid to be judged, perhaps to be authentic because of the judgment. And this film is perfect to me in many ways because the element of the way you enter through this picture frame of cannibalism through to the pure love of these people and who they actually are and the purity of heart within them is really brilliant, I think. I mean, it's why Luca's such a brilliant director. And the craving and need to be seen for what you are and to be loved for that, I think, is essential and very important right now. I think a lot of young kids especially want to feel like they can be free to make mistakes and not feel like it's going to be held against them forever. We all need that as humans, right?
Do you feel that way about it?
Yeah, I do. What was lovely about this, we were talking about this before with Taylor, is being in the American Midwest with the condition that these young people have in a time before the internet, with no economic agency the way in Luca's other films sometimes people are of a certain wealth or class. It felt I don't want to blow smoke up. I want to leave the interpretation of people when they see the film, but it felt, as Taylor just said, apt to the outsider experience a lot of people feel now, and particularly I think with the overwhelming digital age we're in, a lot of young people feel to be conforming individualistically or individualistically conforming, and not that there's anything wrong with any way anyone chooses to live their life or express themselves, but there's such a fear of, as Taylor so beautifully said, judgment, self-judgment, what others will think, that to tell a story of two people that have a curse that is so awful that thank God there's an element of magical realism here, and people in the real world don't have this burden, but that they have to grapple with it, these two young people, and that they find each other, and that their inherent humanity is confirmed by each other in a way that maybe they didn't believe that before. Something that Taylor said, she's going to kill me if I keep stealing her quote, but that love can be, I feel like I keep butchering it, but that love can be being the protector of your loved one's solitude, carving out that space. We think love's supposed to burn the color red, that it's supposed to be this crazy, fiery experience, which it can be too, but it can also be an act of protection through devotion, and it can be boring, and it can be bad breath, and it can be, and we're not taught to love those things as much. Certainly I wasn't, not the kind of movies or books I was raised on. So as I get older, yeah, these are the kind of stories I want to tell. These are about disenfranchised people, but people that are disenfranchised existentially too, that have no path in front of them. And as much as we have more conversations today about mental health and things like that, some of these bigger questions are, deemed either too romantic or like greedy or something. I don't know.
You spoke about how that informed as well.
The brilliance of America is the vastness.
Yeah.
You don't really know how acute that feeling is until you're faced with it, like in the way that we were. We shot in Nebraska, and on this cliff, I mean, it was, as far as your eye could see, it was like green, and the sunsets were beautiful, and there's so much you can pull from that. And I think there's a stillness that happens too inside, where you can really listen to the wind, and I believe in nature informing so much of there's so much advice there. and we got that. I think I felt that way.
Yeah,
Did you feel like
hugely.
that?
And I like how you even framed the question. It's like these spaces in that part of the country are so open, and during the pandemic, so uninhabited too. Certainly socially, it was a vacuum. Life had been sucked out of it. That to imagine these two characters within that circumstance, again, pre-internet, pre a source of understanding themselves through the lens of anything but their own curse. Something about that felt freeing. Not to be a masochist, but it felt like. And I like how Taylor said it. Those scenes where we're in Nebraska. My favorite scenes in that film Badlands are in those open spaces, and this is totally unrelated. I was just reading an article about, like, in the American West, Midwest, how huge swaths of land are bought now by American billionaires, and how attractive that is to have, huge amounts of land to yourself, and how in Europe there isn't that divvying, there isn't the opportunity to buy land like that, and it's not in the culture for, there isn't this maverick mentality to conquer the land the way with global warming now we know how reckless that can be. But in the 80s, and the classic American mindset really is to put your stamp on things and to be a maverick, and I think we see elements of that with my characters trying to put his stamp on the world, so with such futility and such hopelessness, because he's a blemish on the world in his worldview.
I think that these characters. Oh, what was it? I'm so sorry to get